I'm not an astrologer, but I had a very physical, visceral eclipse experience this week. The Leo eclipse energy that was visible from where I was in the UK, um, and it uh, many people were excited and carried away by seeing the eclipse. I had a very different experience of it. So I'm going to tell you a bit about that. When the eclipse was happening, I was on holiday on the Isle of Skye with my family. And, there was much buzz about it being visible, although it was cloudy on the Isle of Skye, so we couldn't see it anyway. But, you could still experience the fading of the light and the animals going quiet and this sort of thing. And, but all day, the energy had felt really strange to me. There was a weirdness and a foreboding feeling for me. I was very uncomfortable. I wasn't enjoying it at all. And when the time came for the eclipse, I didn't want to go outside. I didn't want to watch it. I didn't want my children to go outside and watch it. Thankfully, because it was cloudy and because we had extremely large windows in the cottage we were staying in, they sort of sat and were able to observe all the light changes and things from inside. But there was a definite feeling of, there was almost threat. I reacted in a very physical way to it. Um, and so we sat in the window and it was a bit of a damp squib because you couldn't see anything. It just sort of, the light faded a bit and the birds stopped singing and the sheep did not stop bleating. They didn't care. They're unmoved by eclipses, our sheep. um and that was that. And it was a bit of a, it was a bit boring, because there was, you couldn't see it from where we were. But I couldn't shake this uncomfortable feeling. And that night, immediately after the eclipse, I had a dream. I was with my eldest son outside an old mill that had been turned into homes. And it was an open day to showcase the new development of homes, and to, try and get people to sign up to buy them before they were all finished. And it was a very northern looking town in England, dark stone, discolored by years of coal burning and blackened exterior. The day was drab and cloudy and damp. It was all very the grit and the reality of living in the north. It was all very hard graft and practical. And obviously, being an old mill, it was representative of long days and physical labor and um, unethical employment practices and all the things that an old mill, not a nice water mill or something like that, but an old factory mill in the north conjures. And so we went inside, my eldest son and I, and walking inside this old converted mill that we were expecting to be apartments, show homes, whatever, there was a sense that we were looking for somewhere else to live. And this had got our attention, this conversion. But walking inside was fantastical. Inside the building were vast spaces, fantastic lands, projected and augmented realities so that you could live however you wished inside this building. Your small home could become a vast mansion on the interior at the press of a button. Your room could become a vast lake with waterfalls and flying mythical creatures, bearing no relation to the actual physical size of the building, of the container, or the material structure it was made from, or anything. And you could travel through, you could walk through these realities. You could touch the water and it was wet. You could hear the water falling. You could hear the creatures crying. You could, calling. You could touch the plants. You could smell the smells. You could run the water in your copper bath, in your enormous room with amazing views, all contained within this drab stone mill on the outside. And the drab exterior of this building was immediately forgotten in the rooms filled with brightly coloured worlds. And there was food offered, the best quality in vast quantities, free. And it was almost forced on you. You know, everywhere you went, you were being offered and offered and offered food. And it reminded me of the stories of Tir na Nog and the fairyland, where you mustn't accept what you're offered to eat, or you can be controlled, or you can never leave. And I remember being offered yogurt and fruit and seeds and, you know, stuffed dates and figs and lovely, unctuous, delicious foods, but interestingly, no meat. I remember that there was dairy, but it was all natural, unprocessed food. Um, and but to truly tailor this way of living to your personal dreams, to truly be able to fully control this way of living, you had to download an app on your phone. So, to give you full control over your entire reality in this way of living, to buy into it fully, you had to download their app on your phone. And everyone eagerly did so, including me. It was fun. We were swept up in the adventure. You know, we were naive and innocent. This was like, yeah, this amazing world of possibilities, of escape. And so we all did. You know, my son didn't actually. I don't remember him doing it, but I did it on my phone and everybody else did as well. And so we stepped outside and immediately were back in the real world, in the drab and the dark and the cloudy and the wet and the harsh and the cold. And we called my husband and we said, you must come and see this amazing place. And so he did. And interestingly, my youngest son wasn't there. I don't know why. There was no explanation for that. It seemed completely normal. It was very strange. So we all returned and viewed the amazing worlds in this old mill with, you know, utter amazement and wonder. And but the day was getting on, and the allotted time for the open day was running out, and we needed to leave and get home. And so we made our way to the exit. And on the way out, some of the people attending were refusing to leave. There were scuffles breaking out and fights and with security as those who didn't have the funds to sign up were removed. And, you know, why should they? You know, it was the stuff of dreams. Why should they go back to the cold and the dark and the drab and the physically demanding and the stressful and the depressing and the, you know, and others were eagerly signing away their money, you know, barely reading the contracts they signed. There was a fervor, a almost manic crazed signing away of their belongings and their money, and they were just like, where do I sign? People going crazy to try and sign up to, you know, this way of living. They just wanted it at all costs. They weren't even reading what they were signing up to. But I couldn't shake this feeling, just as in the eclipse energy, I couldn't shake this feeling that something just wasn't quite right. It it felt uncomfortable, unsettling, even though it was fantastical and amazing. It felt like you know, augmented. It felt like too good to be true. It felt like there was a catch, that there was a trick. And I felt uncomfortable and I couldn't shake it. Anyway, we were leaving, and there was a sense that we wanted to sleep on it before we decided whether we were going to buy into this. And my son had been offered some food there, but late. He can't eat yogurt, and we waited for a dairy-free option to come, and it took a long time. So by the time his food arrived, it was time to leave. So he hadn't eaten it. So he took the bowl of yogurt along with us as we left, uneaten, planning just to finish it in the car. You know, the food was free, it was foisted upon you. So we left with this bowl of yogurt and seeds and fruit that my son had been given. And we drove home across the countryside, you know, the rolling hills of the north, which the natural world in the north, when you're not in the mill towns with the dark stone and things, is just breathtakingly beautiful. And so, you know, this is what we were driving across. And you know, also digesting all the things that we'd experienced and how wonderful it was, and you know, that we really had a serious decision to make about, you know, whether this is somewhere we wanted to sell up and move to. And then my phone pinged, and it was a bill for the uneaten food that my son had taken with him. And although it was freely offered, almost forced upon us, not consumed on site, there was a charge, and it was substantial, and it was disproportionate. I remember a sharp intake of breath as I saw how much they charged for this, for leaving with it unconsumed. And I had an uneasy feeling, a sense of subtle control, that you can have anything you wish as long as you stay where they want you, as long as you accept your gifts and stay where you are within the simulation. And my husband was driving quite fast, not out of control, just swiftly, you know. The roads were empty. We were the only people on it. And up ahead, I could see that there were roadworks, cones, and then the road ran out. There was just no road and a chasm. And my husband didn't slow down. And strangely, there was no fear. I didn't react. I observed us career through the barriers and over the chasm. And just as my stomach did that lurch as you go over the top of a roller coaster or something, and then there's the drop, as I expected the car with all of us in it to fall, we carried on driving, like through the air, like we could fly. And it was then I realized that we were still in the simulation. We had never left the mill at all. And a creeping sense of foreboding came over me. And I looked down at my phone, the device that controlled the simulation. And I realized that downloading the app on my phone had given whoever controlled this, whoever owned this, an in to my reality, an ability to control what I was experiencing. And then I saw myself walking to a lake. This is fairly significant for me because of Arthurian legend and my closeness to that. And I saw myself walking to this lake and looking down at my phone and all the things that my phone represented. You know, my reliance on the calendar to remember all my appointments and timings of my life, all my messages. I don't remember my phone numbers anymore. They're all saved in my phone. Why should I? There's no need to remember people's phone numbers anymore beyond my husband's. I don't even know my son's. All the email addresses, all the messages, all the emails I've saved. I don't have to use my own mind anymore. And I looked at the app on the phone and everything it represented, this ability to access this and control this amazing reality of this simulation. And I looked at it and I remember thinking, fondly of it, of how I liked this way of living, how easy it was, how comforting. And then I threw my phone into the lake and I turned and walked away. And then I woke up. And on waking, I had a similar feeling to how I'd had at the eclipse, except that it was clearer. It was a sense like a crisis of faith for me. And the first target of this feeling the dream had left me with was YouTube. I've never been comfortable with being seen. I've never wanted attention. I'm not a person that's ever wanted to put on a show, you know? It doesn't give me any sense of satisfaction or fulfillment to be seen by others. It holds no interest for me. But it's a necessary evil in order to help others and spread the messages that I'm given. It's the world I find myself in. It's just the world I find myself in. And I could keep all my experiences to myself and carry on, but then there'd be no ripples on the pond, right? There'd be no people helped by the things that I have experienced. There'd be no people reassured. There'd be people who weren't brave enough to follow their path, go on their journey, because they could see that I had and I was okay, you know? And none of the messages I was given would reach their recipients, right? So here I am. And so it left me with the question, not whether to be seen, but how to be seen. And that's what this eclipse asked me. To consider what's important. And I was left with the feeling that the slick presentation, the AI generated videos, the editing, the background music, the professionalism and appearances, they don't matter. They don't matter. I mean, they make you look like more presentable, more palatable, but they don't matter. The message does. And it calls to me, this eclipse energy, not to edit messages, not to leave anything out, to let it flow, mistakes and all. Let it fall, let it burn. We've been through a huge shift and we're creating now. You know, a lot of you may notice that things you think, things you would like start appearing. And you might be excited by the prospect. You might be intimidated by the prospect. But we mustn't rest on our laurels. We mustn't think we've reached the destination. Don't re-imprison yourself in a new construct that is more palatable, but equally false. We're on a ride. We're on a wild ride. And sometimes it won't be what you think it should or would be. But to be free, we have to let go of all expectations. You know, I'm sitting here in my pajamas with bed hair and no makeup on and probably cloudy glasses. And so what? You can't take anything with you from this game, from this simulation. It doesn't, yes, we can now manifest. Yes, we can now create. And that is important, really important for everybody, because we have got to live within this and how we choose to live within this. But don't become too attached to it. Don't reattach to the things you create exactly how you had done in the previous simulation. You know, just because you can control it now, just because you can make things, create things, and that's exciting and that's brilliant, don't become trapped by exactly the things you were trapped by before. The only difference is you're making it now. You can create and destroy now, not somebody else. But it's still a game. And you arrive naked and you leave naked. Let go of your attachments. You can't take it with you. Enjoy things for what they are while you're here. You know, revel in them, celebrate them, love them. A time, a moment, a gift of an experience, a connection, a relationship, children, the gifts for what they are, but you can't control it and you can't take it with you. You can only take what your soul can carry, your memories, what you've learned. That's all that endures. That's all you take. The love and the laughter. Don't become attached to a new story, to a new narrative, even the joyous one. Learn, observe, reinforce your heart with what you've gained. The way isn't always going to make sense. Sometimes we will think we are lost. but we must continue freely, and we'll walk together into the unknown.